Okay, then I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, October 18, 2022 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was trying to sync with them.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Live TV,
I
never
don't
done.
have any announcements this evening.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I do have an announcement here from Lisa had asked that we present this, and somehow this ended on my packet. So if you'd humor me, but there's a message from the Board of Health regarding mattress and textile recycling. New state rules require mattresses and textiles be kept out of the trash so they can be recycled or donated for reuse. As of November 1, 2022, mattresses and textiles can no longer be thrown in the trash. Residents should know that mattresses and box springs can bring, or they can be brought to Berkowitz Trucking in Whitensville, Mass. There is a fee for disposal. Webster Transfer Station also with a fee for disposal. And the Central Mass Housing Alliance, a charity, no fee is listed there, so that might be an option. And regards to textiles, which includes clothes, shoes, linens, towels, curtains, and cloth accessories, textiles can be disposed of in the Textile Recycle Center located in the recycle area of the transfer station. And of course, if you want more information, you can always go to douglas-ma.gov.
And warn everybody not to take the labels off the mattresses, though. They'll get 20 years of federal crime.
That's right. This is
That's
true.
free legal advice from
Yeah.
Cal Davis.
So that is it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Is there anybody in the audience that's here for anything that's not currently posted on the agenda?
No.
Silence says none. At this point, we'll go into our first agenda item, and I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for poll petition for 123 Gilboa Street.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Vote and aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. All right, so we have a poll petition for 123 Gilboa Street. Just looking down through it, bear with me. So, Mass Electric, DBA National Grid, and Verizon New England are requesting permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way, which is Gilboa Street, and they're going to install one JO pole and relocate two JO poles on Gilboa, temporarily relocating the pole for line installation in New Bridge at 123 Gilboa Street, relocate pole 54 across the street, and relocate 53 across the street. And then they'll install one new pole, 52-1, across the street from the existing pole 52, and pole 52 will remain for service to the pump station. Some poles may remain as stub poles for future service to 123 Gilboa. And I believe we have a plan in our packet. Is there anyone here from National Grid to speak on this?
There is. He's coming forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Parent. I'm a senior designer at National Grid out of the Hopedale office. And as was stated, this work is to be done for bridge work that needs to be done, and so it's temporarily moving poles to the other side of the street, carry the wire, keep it out of the way of the work that's being done. And I'm not well versed in the project, but I'm going to guess that when it's done, they're going to move the poles back. I'm not sure if they're going to go back in the same spot or not, but we'll have to petition for it again, I'm sure.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, is there anyone in the audience that is interested in this particular matter? There are no residents here, Kevin.
Okay. And have we heard from, like, I'm assuming all abutters have been noticed, has there been any formal position from highway, police, or fire?
Not contained in our packet. We do have the memo indicating that notice was given to the abutters.
Okay.
Seeing as there are no residents here, and it seems pretty straightforward, albeit probably temporary, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, can I do that?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
you can.
Yeah,
you can
whatever.
motion to close the public hearing, yeah.
yeah, I know, you're not there, it's a little tricky. Motion's on the table.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. So I'd entertain a motion of approving the full petition as presented.
So,
Make a mo, go ahead.
I so moved it.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
You good to go?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, so we can move to the second agenda item. We do have Mary Ellen Brisbos on chat, is having difficulty logging in.
I don't know what to do about that. It's a link.
It looks like she's having a browser issue, Max, because it's not showing video or audio for her.
Yeah. Well, you can go out to the other candidate and I can try to chat with her.
Okay. Agenda item number 2, we have appointments to the Board of Health. David Balby and Mary Ellen Brisboe. And we'll start with David. Is he in the audience?
He is. Come on up, David.
David.
Good evening.
Thank you, sirs. Good evening.
So you want to serve on the board?
I do.
You have plenty of experience. It would make great sense.
Well, we moved here in Douglas 2015, and I've worked for the Rhode Island Department of Health for 15 years. At the beginning of the COVID outbreak, we offered our services to Agnieszka, the public health nurse in town. My wife works for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and we offered any assistance we could. And we were reapproached later on and said, would you be willing to serve on the board? And I said yes.
Great.
Get a 2-for-1 with you and your wife.
It's true.
Are you still at the department?
Yes, I am.
In what division or department?
Sure. So I work in the Center for Emergency Preparedness and Response. I'm the training and exercise director there.
For you.
It's a nice skill level.
Completely.
Be a welcome addition.
So,
How long a term is it?
23 years, I think. I don't know.
20 years now?
23, that is for the longest. A 3-year term. So I would make a motion that we approve David as a member of the Board of Health for a term ending in 3 years, if that's acceptable, sir.
Sure is.
Is Excellent. The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I,
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
just like that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Thank
No,
you,
appreciate
David.
it. Thank you. And he should run down to the town clerk at some point? Is that right?
Be sworn in.
Is that what we
Yeah.
say?
Okay. Very good.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could be
I think
more
we're
qualified
still-
than that.
What's that?
Mr. Chairman, just reviewing the application for Mary Ellen, where she's having difficulties, and she,
He's also good at.
according to her application, she is well skilled to serve in
Yeah.
that capacity. Oh, she's on.
Thank you.
If you can figure out Avaya, you can serve on any board you want.
Why do you think it sounds difficult, Matt?
I just arrived, you know?
Welcome, Mary Ellen, and thank you. How long have you been in town?
Since 1997.
Oh, great.
That's when I moved in.
And what made you want to serve on the Board of Health?
I actually received an email from someone from the Board of Health just requesting I submit an application. But it's something I'm very interested in doing, certainly for the town. And I've been a nurse for 36 years, and I work as a public health nurse. And I also teach community and public health at UMass Dartmouth. So hopefully I can, do something to support the Board of Health.
Another candidate with great background.
Absolutely.
Is this a 3-year term too?
It is.
Make a motion to appoint Mary Ellen to a 3-year term to the Board of Health.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I,
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. So, thank you for volunteering, Mary Ellen.
Thank you. Are the meetings monthly? And I think I heard you say a term. I'm not sure. Did you say 3-year?
yes.
It was either 3 or 30. I'm not sure what Tim said.
I'm sorry?
It was either 3 or 30. I don't know what Tim said.
Oh, well, I'll be retired.
Yeah, and go to the town clerk to get sworn in.
Correct.
I don't think she heard you.
Yeah.
If you could go to the town clerk's office and get sworn in when it's convenient.
Yes, that's fine. Do I have to make an appointment or I can just go in?
Just go
Go
in.
in.
Yep. They're open late on Tuesdays. Yeah.
And closed on Friday.
And closed on Fridays, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Agreeing to serve.
Can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Good night.
Have a good night.
All right, so we're on to review and sign the state election warrant.
What's the vote? To post the warrant? For the,
This is the
For us to
election warrant.
sign it.
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we sign the state election warrant, the election being held on the 8th day of November, 2022.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Okay, ARPA discussion and possible votes. So Matt, I think the first one is feedback from CLA on ARPA department requests.
Did you mean to take that out of order? I had,
Town meeting warrant.
Oh, geez. Sorry about that. That one slipped right by me. I didn't mean to take that out of order. My apologies. So we need to approve and sign this STM warrant and possible votes.
Matt, I think you said this, but why are we doing this on Wednesday as opposed to traditional Monday?
You have parent visitation nights at the school.
Make a motion to approve and sign the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Okay, motion's
So-
been made and seconded.
I wasn't at the last meeting that we held, but did we properly go through this? Are the townspeople effectively aware of the items on here, or should we go through some of this? Do you see any areas that should be highlighted that we don't worry about?
You go through it, Keith?
I believe we went through all these.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
Good.
Did you want to review them, Tim? Or?
No, I mean, I can, it was more for the masses at home that tune in every other Tuesday. But no, I mean, it's
He's a closet Marxist.
Could be multitudes.
Could be multitude.
I got
The many.
Marks.
The millions and millions of fans.
Right, yeah, I guess maybe.
But
Motion's on the table.
we did go through these. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any additional discussion on this? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Now we'll do the ARPA discussion and possible votes.
Didn't we already do this?
Well, the one part I'd be curious on is the first bullet item, the feedback from CLA on our department request.
So I don't lose the passage of time. Karl Marx almost always referred to the people as the masses. And that.
All right, I was gonna.
Hal and I, being Marxian scholars, laughed. We had to explain why we were laughing. The masses.
Yeah, I was gonna Google that after, but okay.
Proletarians, masses, workers of the world unite versus the bourgeois.
Blacks.
Well, look, that was a different story entirely. Mr. Chairman, I actually thought the correspondence from CLA was in your packet. It doesn't appear to be. CLA is our new consultant. They were given all of the town's proposals to review for eligibility under ARPA. They have come back with a written opinion that you don't have in front of you, but I will forward to you or via email, because that's how it came, that virtually all of the projects proposed by the various department heads are eligible under ARPA because the town received less than $10 million. We may treat all ARPA funds as quote-unquote revenue replacement. It is just assumed for purposes of the federal regulations that all legitimate government purposes that we've decided not to do, either theoretically or in reality, during the COVID outbreak, is eligible for funding. So that was all of the proposals. So that's what is not in your packet.
So that basically all of the suggestions stood that test.
I think that the one thing where the jury is still out, but I don't know that we'll get a definitive answer, was whether or not the funds could be used for road construction to connect the two campuses together.
Say that again?
Whether or not you could build a road with ARPA funds,
To connect your access road.
Yeah.
your access road.
Right. But they're currently reviewing that, or will review it?
They will review it. So the rest of what is in your packet is, I'm trying to get things to move along, and I'm going to tell you why. We have any number of quotes in here that are starting to expire because we started working on this in May. So we are now in October. So some of the things that we were told of what things would cost, they either have recently expired or are soon to expire. I don't think they're going to go up dramatically. I don't think it's a crisis. I'm just saying that what it does do is it draws attention to the fact that we've been talking about this for a while. And given that there are a couple of large projects that were on the list from water sewer that will require the cooperation of the water commissioners and town meeting, the sooner we can arrive at a recommendation to send to the water commissioners, perhaps it would actually be a joint meeting of the select board and the water commission, to determine what to ask town meeting for, either in the way of, it would have to be in the way of borrowing, to do the water department's part of the work. Because the ARPA funds on their own, if every last dime were spent, would not be enough to finish the 2 remaining projects being contemplated. So with that, I think there's a choice to be made for that big ticket item, and then depending which way you go with that big ticket item, you'll have a remaining budget for smaller projects. And in order to try to get some traction on this, I went through it myself and tried to rank order them in terms of their priority for operations. What do we need to do to either enhance the effectiveness or the efficiency of the operation, short of major capital expenditures. We're still going to have a capital budget for the foreseeable future. Some of the items that might have been suggested here have either come off the list of capital items that are requested from year to year. They might be items that perhaps will show up in future years because they haven't shown up yet. But to the extent that you can address them, you will no longer have to rate them in the capital process. Kind of looking at this as really is our ability to have a second round of capital funding. Only this round doesn't require town meeting approval, it's the select board.
Yeah, the question that comes to mind, I'm glad you touched on to the capital thing, because I was thinking through this, because of the way you're labeling it as revenue replacement. So then I went and pulled out the capital bylaw. Are we obligated through that capital bylaw to still go through that process with these funds? That, I would like some clarity on that, just to make sure that we're not violating any procedures that we're supposed to follow.
My answer would be no, because grant funds are typically spent by the select board without further appropriation. And that has been green communities, virtually every grant program. This is a lot of money, but it is still a federal grant.
Right.
That's an
And
allocation.
I get all that is because of the way you said that it was supposed to be viewed as revenue replacement, which made it a gray area. So that's why I asked the question, for no other reason.
So I would at least, and I see that Bob Sullivan is here. Mr. Chairman, if he could have the floor for a couple of minutes and explain how we arrived at our recommendation, I do think the board would probably find it helpful. And then he could leave.
Good evening. So we discussed the project, came back over all projects that I had submitted. This one seems to be the most pertinent, I would say, based on, we've discussed with the select board in the past that running sewer up to the safety complex or whatever it was referred to at the time, the water and sewer being an enterprise fund, it doesn't make sense from a business standpoint to spend those funds from ratepayers, because the return on investment would be like 100 years. So it's not feasible to run the sewer up there from a business standpoint, but ARPA funds not being ratepayers or taxpayers' money, it somewhat makes sense to use what I'll refer to as found money to do a project like running sewer up.
You said it. You're on your own with that.
So to do a project like that, in doing that project, if we're going to do the sewer, it makes sense to do the water at the same time. Originally, I had proposed projects several times on running the water main from Franklin Street, basically up to the Church Street tank. It's all old cast iron line. Water main, it's undersized. It's past its actual useful life. It had approximately a dozen breaks on that line. That line is the main artery from all the wells to the storage tanks, and it transfers the water from the Franklin Street tank to the Church Street tank, and it acts as the main artery for fire protection between both tanks and pretty much the entire town. So that being a key, critical piece of the infrastructure, and with some of the larger buildings going in place, if we were to have a break on that main, we would potentially lose our fire protection and domestic water throughout the whole town. And like I said, doing the water and sewer at the same time, if the sewer is something that the town's serious about getting up to the highway department or the fire department, because it also opens up a few more opportunities for development in that area.
So the cost of the water line, how would that work? Because you had said the value of that was 7.5 million when you came in and did the presentation.
So the original value was based on running from Franklin Street all the way to the Church Street tank, finishing that loop around Northwest Main, and running the new water main down to where the ductile iron starts on Southwest Main, which is right in front of Camp 80. So through this scope of project, we wouldn't go that far because that's a lot more money than I think the commissioners are willing to spend at this time. But like I said, if we were to move forward with the sewer project, I would personally want to extend the water at the same time so that we could do, correct all the issues in that main, and then do a full overlay so that once you pave it, you don't have to dig it back up. So if you do sewer, and then being the main road through town, if you get a sewer trench, and then you patch that, it's going to make for terrible road conditions, as there's already some issues on that road as it is. So I just think that this would solve a lot of problems. We wouldn't get full water main done that needs to be done, but we would be, a little more than halfway.
Okay.
So it's about a mile of water.
So one of the questions you didn't answer for me, how would that be funded, that water line replacement?
Yeah, so for the water main, like I said, it would be a much shorter scope, so it would be less funds. But that would be, for one, I would be looking for other opportunities. So, right now infrastructure is big, lead service line replacement, things like that is big. So I would be looking at taking a loan with the potential principal forgiveness, or if there's other opportunities, just with all the talk about infrastructure and aging infrastructure and the lead and copper stuff. And if I can apply any of those, I would work towards seeing if we can get any kind of get relief on those. But essentially, it would be through a loan. I haven't discussed it with the commissioners as for their take on it yet, but like I said, it would most likely be in the form of a loan, probably through the water sewer. And we did it as a joint project with the ARPA funds and the water sewer. I think that would kind of meet the goals of both departments.
But I think,
So
what federal program would you be drawing the loan against?
That all depends, because they change day to day. Last year, we almost made it.
So SRF is, again, it's state revolving fund?
Yeah. So they have a state revolving fund, and with the lead and copper being a big issue right now, that's one of the articles we have on this special town meeting is the lead service line inventory. So we're supposed to be inventorying all the service to determine if we think there's any lead service lines, which we do not think there is, but there is lead goosenecks, we do know that, and that counts towards the lead service line. So this first phase of the SRF, where it's 100% principal forgiveness for this part of it, we'll do the investigatory part of it, and if we identify that there's a lot of lead goosenecks on Main Street, then I would potentially be able to argue that this would be part of the lead replacement program. Instead of just replacing little bits and pieces, we would replace the whole main. And in doing that, we would take care of lead service lines.
But Bob, what is the ARPA funding dollar amount that's the ask on this?
1.5.
Well, I didn't put down the dollar amount. I put down what we estimated the project to be, which was probably a little over $2 million. So, I don't know, I suppose that would be up to the department or up to the select board, and, a conversation that we would have. So, obviously, I would look for as much as I could get. But if the select board has other projects that they see value in and, pull some of those funds for those projects, that's up to the board.
Can we talk about the other system if we
Yeah,
go?
go ahead, Nim.
If everybody's good on that other one, I'd like to hear about the second proposal for Depot Street.
So Depot Street, the issue with Depot Street is every time we have a heavy water usage downtown or over on Gilboa Street or A Street, B Street, that area, anytime we have a major draw of water there, the water main going up Depot Street is an old cast iron line, heavily tuberculated, so when you have that rush of water come by, it stirs it up, so we get a lot of water quality complaints on Depot Street and Martin Street, or Martin Road. So that project, we were looking at replacing the main up Depot Street, going up through that right of way to get over to Maple. Down Maple, the short distance to the intersection of Maple and Martin to connect to the existing main there. That would create a loop right now up Martin Road and down the other side of Maple is a dead end. So it's a long dead end. So anytime we have an issue on Depot Street or we start pulling heavy water, it kind of pulls the water out of there, stirs that up. So you get water quality complaints up on Martin and Depot and Orchard Place. So replacing that main would increase the resiliency on the water source running the Franklin Street main. So right now we've got a new ductile iron main going from Franklin down to Main Street, feeds from the 750,000 gallon tank. Should something happen to that main on Franklin Street, you're running through old cast iron main that doesn't give you the flows that you would need. So if we have the main shut down on Franklin, although we would still be supplying water, you would not have the fire flows necessary. Then beyond that, in doing that project, I would also look at trying to put a new fire service to the municipal building in case you guys do decide to further use that building. If you try to do anything on the second floor, I believe you'd have to sprinkler that. The 4-inch line feeding that, being an old cast iron line, that's probably tuberculated and probably wouldn't have the flows you need either. So we would upgrade that line to make sure you have the volume that you would need, as well as a new domestic service going in, because your domestic service is actually off your fire service right now. And I know me and Matt have talked a little bit about the culvert issue up on Depot, so we haven't really got a number nailed down on that yet, but I'll probably, once we start messing with the road, digging trenches, it would likely cause more problems for that culvert, so that culvert would need to be addressed at the same time.
Thank you, Bob.
So our memo here said 1.5 for the first project. Are these just rough estimates?
Now, frankly, that's what, after my conversation with Mr. Sullivan, is what I thought we would give towards either one of these projects. The Depot Street project is more involved because of the loop that he's trying to create, and basically, the town contribution would be to replace all the pipe on Depot, and the Water Commission would take it from there to do whatever they wish to do to create that loop. But the ARPA funds would be for that portion of Depot Street. Just, a fairly decent run, but it would also involve the upgrade of this building. The 1.5, Bob, I had a little sticky note I think I was writing on, which I may be hard pressed to find. I know what pile it's in on the conference room table, but I think the rationale there was you were a little over 2 million. We said with contingency probably 2.5 for the Main Street.
Roughly.
So I was basically thinking the town would give you 1.5 of ARPA, and you would have to come up with a loan in the $1 million range.
Correct.
We would bear a little bit more of that because the decision to push sewer down there is a policy decision. As Bob pointed out, it's not supported by the economics of it. The two main policy objectives, one would be to make it more readily possible to build new municipal buildings down towards that end of town, so to deal with the highway situation, to expand possibly the fire building with being able to occupy more of the space, so you wouldn't have to leave space sacred for the septic, you would just be able to connect the sewer. The second policy goal would be to get as many people along that stretch onto sewer, because that is the aquifer protection zone. And it's just, there's not a lot of septics out there, but it's still a good policy decision to take them off septic, put them on public wastewater.
Would you have betterment fees on that too?
Well, I'm sure you would. The other piece of it is,
50/50.
once you do that much work on the road, you're basically talking about curb-to-curb paving after you close up the trenches. So if your imagination, if you're willing to engage in a flight of fancy, if that section of Main Street were paved curb to curb, that would be a substantial improvement to the town, because that's one of the roughest areas because of the water main breaks and some of the stormwater management issues on that run. If that run were completed, you would now be able to go almost the entire length of Route 16 on relatively new pavement. The Commonwealth did Webster Street to the intersection. Then you would be on old pavement until you got to the highway, but then from the highway to Franklin, you'd be on new pavement. You'd go back to old pavement downtown, but then you would have new pavement on North and Gilboa. So it's not pure 16, because Davis Street would go in the other direction. We will eventually address Davis Street with the similar utility expansion conversation. But, so you would be able to drive from one end of the town all the way to 146 on pretty much new pavement, because Gilboa will be curb to curb.
Be curious under the street traffic or the street survey that we did, given the volume there, how high that, or where that section rated within that study.
Well, I can grab that for you if you want to be patient, because it's easy enough to find. But what they don't do in the Stantec study is they don't tell you the traffic counts. They only tell you the pavement condition.
Okay.
I can say without having to look it up, but the traffic count from, Douglas is a huge funnel, right? So it gathers all the traffic onto Main Street, pretty much the common, and then almost all of that traffic stays all the way into downtown, and it starts to disperse again, either to go down North Street to Gilboa to pick up 146, or down Davis Street to go into Uxbridge or pick up 146 further south. But, so all the traffic gets funneled in, it stays on Main Street, and then it breaks off again.
And you have that traffic study from when they were looking at the property across from the fires.
So CMRPC does those regular traffic updates plus the private interest, so it's about 10,000 cars a day. 10,000 trips, I should say. 10,000 trips.
40 of them mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, $1.5 million project has the advantage of allowing you enough funds to do a lot of other things, too.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Get lucky with the bidding and perhaps we get under our estimates.
Yeah.
right. I won't be at all shy about what I'm trying to do here with the rest of it, because there are a lot of requests into the select board. Most of what I put on the top are things that really are most pressing, either for a security basis or a building integrity, so the building that we know we're going to occupy, or a resource that we know we need to have to operate town government. So the rest of the list starts off with security for the school buildings. It next turns to a roof, the roof on this very small roof over the top of the elevator in the portion of the building that was added, so the gymnasium and the lobby with the elevator. The elevator is our ADA access to the building. It's what will allow us to actually utilize the whole building. Elevators are profoundly expensive to fix.
Big investment.
It's a huge deal. So this is really short money to save long money. The estimate came in from a professional at $19,850. Even if you double that, you say they didn't think about everything they should have. It's still only 40 grand to take a huge headache away. I think that elevator, to fix that elevator as it sits now, I don't want to speculate, but it would be deep into 6 digits, for sure. The next thing after that is the HVAC system at the fire department, which I think we've talked about, I don't want to say ad nauseum, but for a long time. The next priority would be the HVAC in this building. So we have replaced 2 of the 4 rooftop units that handle the second floor. We have units that handle the first floor. And they're units out back, there's unit in front, that's pretty much what they do. The units in the back handle the back half of the building. The unit in front handles the front half. And then we have special break-offs on the ductwork for our IT room and for the cable room. Yet neither one of those units is terribly new, and they should be much more efficient and set up differently than they are. The one in the IT room is most definitely on its last leg, so we've done significant repairs to the AC unit in the IT room. The IT room has about $49,900 worth of equipment in it, but it's not just the equipment itself, it's what's on it. It's the information that we need
And the
to
function that it
safeguard.
serves. Yeah.
And the cable equipment, if they had to, just at their purchase price was $80,000. The replacement cost is probably well above $80,000. So we're talking about $130,000 or so worth of equipment, and we'd be spending some portion of $165 to address it. The next 2 things will be phones, and this is where we're turning into pumpkins here, so close to Halloween. You know, these bids are only good for so long. Our quotes here, it's about $32,000 worth of work. The only thing I draw people's attention to is that the phones are not free. They would create an operational cost every year. It's basically a subscription, annual cost. That's more or less equal to the investment to install them. So our operating budget would increase if we did both the schools and the municipal center by about $34,000 a year. Next on the list is the town clerk and her request. So the town clerk's had 2 requests in her packet. One was for climate control in her storage space up here, next to the cable room. So if we did the AC unit in the cable room, we would address the other 2 storage spaces next to the cable space. But if she were able to move her documents out of here, there'd be more room for cable to do some things on the other side of their equipment room. And the notion is not new. It's been discussed before that all of our oldest documents are not in a climate-controlled setting, so they are deteriorating very badly and quickly. We have identified the space, Selectman Fitzpatrick, along with the town clerk, the old locker room next to the gym is amenable to improvement because of the configuration. So you brick in the windows, you would have a completely sealed space, you'd climate control and somehow fire suppression service, probably sprinklers, would be installed, and you would address most of the state requirements, if not all of the state requirements, for the safeguarding of the town's most ancient and most vulnerable documents, which is a responsibility that all towns have. And the last two items were items that were requested that are affordable if you go with the recommended water project, which are one command vehicle for fire and ambulance and an adult social center bus, which I know is on the warrant for a separate freestanding vote at town meeting. Just so you say, why is it back on here? It's back on here because you could do it with ARPA without it going to town meeting. So, the lead times on any vehicle are fairly substantial. Buses are a good 5-6 months out.
Well, town meeting's in 3 weeks out, so what are you suggesting, that we make a decision on all this stuff prior to that?
To be honest, if Mr. Chairman, if I could, I really want to ask the select board to approve the phone projects tonight so we could sign those contracts and get started. We've been working on this now with the vendor. It's a statewide contract. We're working with the vendor to do very specific research into what those things are going to cost. That's a firm quote. Expired within the last day or two. We can probably get the same price if we act quickly. So if I can tell Caroline tomorrow, the select board has approved it, then we can just go forward. And that's whatever, like I said, $34,000 out of 2.37 million.
But it's a body next year at the school, right? Did you say there's going to be an operating expense?
Yep.
Right.
But having said that, they asked for it, right? They've made that decision that the school, high school phone system in particular is so old and dysfunctional that they're just at the point where they need to replace it.
Well, that's a safety thing too, it's not operating.
It ties together.
Well, one thing it addresses for the administration in this building as well as that building, he can pick up and dial a 3-digit extension or 4-digit, whatever it comes out to be, and reach the person. Now he's got a town administrator, as being he. Town administrator would need to call the school and then go through all the prompts to try to reach whoever it is that he's trying to reach. So, and that's one problem that gets solved with that, other, as well as the challenges. And I only know a little bit about this because it's come through the capital process as well. And the town administrator is also having challenges with the system itself.
Financially speaking, it makes more sense to do a subscription-based service. Because what we've been doing in the past is actually buying an asset and then trying to sweat that asset for as long as humanly possible. More often than not, resulting in it being end of life, end of sale, end of support. Making it much more difficult to get parts or get repairs or any of the things that go along with it. The subscription services usually would include a handful of phones to where if you have something that fails, you've got a box there and a hot standby, and you just plug it back in and you're up and in business.
Didn't we reach a point where they wanted us to get some new switch of some sort?
Well, that's going to be part of it. So if we can move to Granite, then we can address the switch issue downstairs without having to deal with partners. I'm somewhat far afield from my best area of expertise to go on and on about this, but I think I've explained it before. That old switch down there is done. And
Yeah, I get it. I'm just trying
the
to.
vendor is only willing to provision a specific switch that is far more expensive than it needs to be, and we just want to
It's a
move.
matter of lack of expertise.
Yeah.
So would you want to package the 6,683 as well as the 25,000?
Yeah. So both municipal center and Douglas Public School phone system projects.
Which is relatively close, so that's 31,000, and when it came to the capital project, it was at 30,000, so it's relatively close to what it was.
Matt, quick question before we do that. It's only the municipal center and the schools. We're not putting fire or water sewer or any of the other town departments on it, or are we?
Good question.
I'm thinking, I'm staring at the ceiling. I want to say that fire is in there. Rather than speculate, well, I need my
We can approve it as
laptop.
is via ARPA, and if
Yeah.
there's any department that's been omitted, I'm sure they can do that as a move, add, or change during the install process.
Right, if you have the vote, then I guess I'll have to talk to the next issue on the agenda as well. I meant to bring my tablet out here. So on the quote, I'm remembering extras, but we can inquire, we're all going to be on the same fiber circuit, so I don't know that it would be a whole lot more expensive. Just looking at the per position cost, a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it as he was speaking, in the town side of it, even if it was isolated to this building, it's only 6,000, so you couldn't add that much to it. Would it make,
Yes.
would it make sense to approve it with a not to exceed dollar amount? Whether it's 35 or 40,000, whatever it is.
To include some extra, like the fire?
Well, just to cover the, if we're going to fix the phone system, let's fix it, because then otherwise, next year, we're trying to address another department. I think that's what Kevin's point was, is to try to correct it all at once.
How about a suggestion not to exceed 40,000?
Yeah, just say that.
That way,
That includes the police?
Oh, it definitely already.
no, there's the 911, it has to be on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, that's what we're trying to correct.
Well, if we're doing that, though, you might as well look at the highway, too.
Well, that's what it is.
That's the open
Yep.
question is,
All probably in the 40,000.
yeah.
Yeah, so with the police in this building, assuming that the other ones weren't included, is 6,000. So if you include the other ones, it wouldn't double it. So if you doubled it, that would put you at 37 with the school department. So $40,000 should be sufficient to cover everything
Not, maybe we
that
have
needs to be
extra
done.
ARPA funds still, and we could, if necessary. So the pool could still, part of it be here anyway.
Yeah, if you're gonna do the expansion on it, now would be the time to do it, because they're doing it as a bundle. So when you try and get into like year 2 and say, well, I want to add an additional 5 or 6 phones, you're gonna get them at a different premium.
I would like to make a motion to authorize the town administrator to use ARPA funds up to the amount of $40,000 to correct or replace the phone system townwide. Would that be a proper statement?
And the school,
Well, townwide would be the school, the school is the town as well.
second?
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this? See,
Real quick, Kevin, you had mentioned our understanding of ARPA was enlightened with our new consultant, and the threshold was 10 million. Explain that?
So that was in all of the correspondence from US Treasury, right? You're under 10 million, so you can use it for revenue replacement. But then there was this hesitation across municipalities
They changed.
because the state in the past, don't convolute the federal program, ARPA, with the state programs administered by the state, the CARES Act and other things. But because they had created this uncertainty and had done some clawbacks, we wanted a definitive written opinion from a well-schooled and widely subscribed consultancy that would say, no, in all of our practice group, X number of municipalities across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we've all agreed that this is what we're going to do. So that's what we got from CLA, which is revenue replacement, use it for any legitimate government purpose. You just want to, it gets a little bit harder to do a major building construction project or a road construction project with ARPA funds, because it doesn't appear to be directly in the clear operational government purpose, right? You would typically borrow to do things like that, and that wasn't what ARPA was contemplated for. So there are some things that are right in the sweet spot. Any water project, any sewer project, all heating, ventilation, air conditioning projects, anything that we learned through the COVID experience was something that were utilities that we needed to function properly, safe drinking water, wastewater, and air handling. We're clearly always going to be safe no matter what. The question was some of these other things, like a vehicle purchase, it's all good. We are on pay dirt with all of
That
it.
guaranteed in any way? Should we get that letter? To pay the
Well,
bill?
you know how people are, right? So, nobody's going to guarantee you anything.
Sticking his neck out for, small dollars, too.
No, I
Yeah.
get that too.
Yeah.
I don't. Right. I totally get it. I just want to make certain that we're making good decisions based on good information.
Yeah.
And if there's confidence at this table, then cool.
The backup confidence that I have is it's also on the capital project, so it's, if it became an issue, it's something that's already thought, a lot of thought got put into it. Just because of the two big expenses that we had this past go-round, it didn't make it, but we tried to get it on now.
Okay. So there is a motion and a second on the
Yeah,
floor.
and Tim, if it's any consolation at all, I mean, the exposure off of the phone system program isn't large dollars. So even in the event that for some reason our consultant was wrong, the town's risk or exposure to risk on this is very minimal. It's something that we would be able to cover probably next year and under capital funding or somewhere else. But it's not huge dollars. I'd be more hesitant, or uncertain if it was a $2 million project, that we were going to utilize ARPA for when we didn't have clear and definitive understanding as to what the government wanted. But as I said, this is a smaller dollar amount, and the risk and the exposure to the town is minimal.
I understand.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded.
We do have a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion beyond this point? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
How about the other item? When do we need to
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might,
pay?
I am looking for one more vote tonight from the Select Board. It's a small item here, but just to give some proper authorization to work in progress. There's a component of the fire department or fire headquarters electrical design project, which is designing in the new mechanical system. So, in my view, that is a necessary part of the electrical design project that was let out to McRitchie and was an added fee of $8,500 to work in quite possibly heat pumps or other electrical dependent items. It would be cleaner, my recommendation, to have the design and installation of HVAC all looked at as separate from the generator and electrical system repair of the building. So the design is a discrete piece, and so even if you choose not to install the new system, you would at least have it designed in, and the electrical system would be designed to handle that demand. But this has already been let out, and I would just prefer to have it all buttoned up neat, rather than trying to squeeze a mechanical project through the electrical box.
He's exhausted the funds that we voted on for the design.
No. So, no, the electrical project is in progress.
Yeah.
when we started talking about adding the mechanicals as a possible
Yep.
piece of the project, he said, McRitchie said, he being Howard Gerber, the lead designer, if it will be far less expensive to the town, it would also make good logical sense when we do our electrical reconfiguration of the fire headquarters, to know what it is that you want to spec out for a mechanical system so that our electrical system will support what you install, that you won't have to start rerouting wires or putting new boxes up.
Okay, I apologize, I misunderstood. So this is the design of the HVAC system, not anything to do with the electrical design. It is, but it isn't.
It is, but it isn't. So in other words, we have funding for the electrical system.
You follow me on that, Tim, but
Yeah, so I'll back up and try to say it a different way. We have funds for the electrical system. I was comfortable accepting the additional fee from McRitchie to do the mechanicals, so they were not part of the original contract.
right.
It's only $8,500, so it's under $10,000. So I had the authority to do that as the procurement officer. But for the sake of keeping it all clean, I view the mechanical project as one separate item from the electrical project. So if I had authorization to spend $8,500 of ARPA money for the mechanical design, it would keep all of the funds that town meeting approved for the electrical project, pure for electrical project. Is that
Yep.
clearer?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
It's 94 degrees, and 2 of our EMTs go running out to a scene. They come home, they come back to the department, and the air conditioning system is not working, doesn't properly cool.
What their current one?
Yeah.
It's
Not to be,
inadequate at
right,
best.
I don't want to overstate the case, but I think it is fair to say heating and air conditioning at the fire department is a train wreck disaster, okay? Because the heating system wasn't properly designed for the way the space is used. So you have basically one really big commercial boiler that runs heat through basically one zone.
Yeah, it's a monoflow.
So all those really high ceilings, it's a monoflow system, so every single heating fixture in the building is taking off the same body of hot water that's been heated by the boiler. And it's profoundly inefficient. We blow through oil on the, it's unbelievable how much we spend heating that one building compared to what we spend heating this building, for instance, as a basis of comparison. So, and plus it's over 20 years old. So the notion is, we're going to take the oil-fired boiler out of that mechanical room entirely and replace it with electrical components, a heat pump
yeah.
system that's properly designed for that kind of space, with small offices, an IT room, all small spaces, and then the big wide open bays. Right now, to cool the place in the summer, they're using room air conditioning units that are just stuck out the window.
Well, it's those portable ones with the dryer vent that goes up the
Yeah.
window, that's what they're using.
So there's a huge electrical draw that's extremely inefficient, right? So room air conditioning will never be able to handle air the way a central air conditioning does. So we're,
Improvements be ready for this winter, or?
no. So even if you approve the whole thing tonight and I went out to bid, I think it would be a spring job, for sure.
Would any of the, after we get, assuming that this gets passed and you get the design done, would this qualify for any green communities where it's a cost savings for the oil? I know the air conditioning has nothing to do with it, but the
And
cost
that's-
savings on energy for oil?
You know, unfortunately, that's the problem with green communities. They are adamant they will not pay for cooling. So when we talk about putting much more efficient air conditioning into the building, the savings that we realize do not count towards the return on investment for the grant. So now they're only looking at the heating portion of it. And the paybacks end up being 30, 40 years. Using their system, the model that they use, I've made no mistake, my point of view, I'm an analyst too, and I think their analysis stinks. I think it's poppycock, right? So we're not just doing a boiler in that building. We separated hot water heater from the boiler. That created efficiencies. We insulated the roof. That makes the building further efficient. We want to replace windows and doors at some point in the near future. You have to take into consideration all of those things. And then the heat pumps on top of that, that's a huge savings to the town. So it's a long answer to your question. I do not think it will, the last two consultants have tried to get it through Green Communities, and it has not made it through. I'm loath to try to take it back through, because I just don't. The one thing I will say is, regardless of what Green Communities does, we would still be eligible for the enhanced National Grid incentive for heat pumps, which is a lot more money now this year than it's ever been in the past. So we could defray a substantial amount of this cost with the incentive.
Thank you.
All right. But all I'm looking for the board to do, Mr. Chairman, tonight was approve the design component, so I feel like that,
From ARPA.
yeah.
I see no issues with it. Anybody care to make a motion?
Just for clarity, the design, what it's going to do is going to give us our heat loss for the building and the efficiency. So that's not going to change. In 5 years from now, it's still going to have the same numbers unless you increase the efficiency of the building envelope itself. So I'm only saying that just so if there's any thought about if this doesn't get done, that we waste money on a design that could be outdated in 2 years. It wouldn't, because this is just the criteria in order to design the system itself.
The other part to it too is if push comes to shove, you could just steal Hal's wallet and get the $8,500.
Probably.
It's a joke.
Well, it is past ice cream season, so there's a good chance that he has a
He's
stash.
got a ton of them. So I would make that motion that we support the $8,500 to design the HVAC system.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded.
Sorry, Hal.
Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
Voting local.
All right.
That's all I'm doing.
That's it.
One scoop at a time.
So an update on town goals and possible goals.
Just real quick on the ARPA thing, I don't want to make a big deal of it, but I think this town has an opportunity to reconcile that public safety need that's been outlined by the chief and the superintendent, and while it's not on this, I would like to really pursue and get a definitive answer on that access road.
So we're going to consider this the next meeting and beyond.
It's going to stay on it until we resolve it.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So Matt, what do we have for an update on town goals?
Well, we've had them for a while, and that's why it's going to be on the agenda every single time you meet until we resolve them.
I can share one of mine, is I'd really like to get a new highway barn built sooner rather than later.
If I could, Mr. Administrator, because we're in the habit of having Lisa shred our documents, I do not have a copy of your goals that you had submitted to us. If you could have one emailed to us in the, that way we could all get a copy of that again.
Get goals.
Because to be honest with you, I don't recall what you have on that list.
So we'll do that again. One of the pieces that has become increasingly important, so it was one of the goals that I had listed on there, because of the dialogue that we're in over utility service to the town, as well as with the solar bylaw and other things that have come up, the exploration of what it would take the municipality to put itself in a position to own and operate solar fields in a microgrid setting, so we are not going to plug into the grid. We would build fields and have our off-takers take the power directly from the power we generate and store in batteries. I don't see any other way around it. I'm willing to listen to anybody who has a better idea, but when you look at a map of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and where we have electrical transmission and distribution capacity to handle all of the extra demand on electricity that various policymakers want to have in place, it's not there. To build that infrastructure would require a significant number of substations to be built, even in the town of Douglas and the neighboring communities, notwithstanding what is needed in the more urbanized parts of Massachusetts. That being the case, we may never, even with all the economic development we do, we may never get to the top of anybody's inbox at National Grid for the next new substation. So if we want to have some sort of independent source of power so that we can continue moving the town forward and our commercial interests and other things that we have to do, we have to think about, well, if the town owns a big piece of property that is immediately adjacent to a project site, and the goal is to get everybody on solar and electric anyway, what do we need to do? There's a lot to it, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of extra time on it without the support of the board. So it's the next thing, right? After all the economic development grants and activity and projects, the next thing that would take up a huge amount of our time would be to position the town's energy strategy for its residents and try to keep things at an affordable level based on market conditions that we see now. Because there are incentives and grant programs and a lot of legal wrangling to go through to create the proper vehicle. Nobody has created a municipal light and power for almost 100 years. To the extent that they've been formed, in the last 100 years, it was for a very specific purpose, mostly for cable service, cable and wireless, not wireless, internet. My town's trying to do it right now. We voted last town meeting to form municipal light and power specifically to improve the internet and cable connectivity of the town, but not to do anything for power generation. So it's a road less traveled. However, the legal creation gives you a vehicle for a proper form of borrowing so that the asset can be built and then the proceeds from the asset can be used to retire its cost. So, and the town would generate revenue from it that we may not get from a private developer. And it can be on our schedule and on our terms. And I think this is where I'm getting a little impatient as a town administrator, is I'm sick and tired of the solar companies blowing in. They build out their field. They do whatever, they wreak whatever havoc they're going to wreak with their stormwater and other issues that they generate. And then once they get their power connection agreement signed off by the building commissioner, they wipe their hands and they walk away. And the townspeople are left looking at the asset, may not be maintained the way they wanted it. Maybe it's creating all kinds of flooding issues. And it doesn't generate a whole lot of extra revenue for the town. It generates a pilot agreement, and that's it. So it's the solar industry's relatively checkered history so far, building these things in the rural communities, that is leading me to think that the recommendation is probably that the town itself should take a position, because those communities that have light and power have a great deal of control over the cost of energy for their commercial interests in their towns. And they're not paying all the transmission and distribution fixed cost loading that they do, which you would if you had grid. So that was one of the items on my list of goals that I would like guidance on. The rest of it goes into contract negotiations, evaluations, and what we're going to do for the next year. My contract specifically calls for goals to be created by the select board every single year as the basis for the conversation for the next evaluation, that you know the work is being organized on a day-to-day basis according to the goals that you set out. So we need to make some progress. So we'll do that by getting it back to you again, that list.
Yeah, I apologize for
Maybe
not
let's
keeping it.
try to nail it down by the end of November. Good.
For what it's worth, one of my priorities was doing something like downtown revitalization to improve the appearance. It looks like we've got a good source of business revenue coming in, so it seems to me, from the economic development standpoint, that'd be one area to look at.
I think I had that on there
Yeah,
because
you
you had
had it
asked.
on there.
Yeah. So we've had some reach outs from Main Street America and similar initiatives. Main streets can be tough. You really want the business community to come together, and everybody's
Yeah.
running their business, so it's hard to get their opinions
Right.
at a meeting type format, but I've been through this effort before, obviously, having worked in Woonsocket.
It's like hurting the,
Try to get everybody together and say,
Yeah.
well, you have to be able to articulate what exactly is it that you want
yeah.
the place to look like. And I think we always wrestle with issues like parking and pedestrian traffic moving around in a road that strangely is almost, the better part of 2.5 lanes wide, right?
Shaped like an hourglass.
It's, yeah, exactly. It's 3 lanes wide, but there's only half a lane on each shoulder, so it's a tough space to work in, but you know what? People deal with much bigger challenges.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there's no minutes in our packet for number 7.
Okay, so we'll skip over minutes, and it brings us to your report, Mr. Administrator.
I think I'm pretty thin tonight on the report. Your packet included, tonight's conversation included most of what we've been working on. We've got some news to share, but I have to hold on to it until next meeting, at least. Good news. I will go through the free cash certification just to let people know where we stand. The Division of Local Services at the state level certified the town with $2.48 million of free cash. What does that mean relatively? It is the lowest it's been in 3 years, but that doesn't mean it isn't the highest, it's the third highest it's been in 10 years. That's pretty much where we are, right? So it was a low amount, then it went up, and it went up very high last year, and this year it's down below fiscal '21, but it's still almost 3 times as much as it was in fiscal '20. So why is that happening? Because town meeting is reinvesting in the town. So the capital expenditures are largely funded through free cash. So we use free cash as a vehicle to improve the town. And our most important goal is to just keep that running percentage of the general operating budget represented by either free cash or stabilization or a combination of the two at a level that's healthy enough to support a strong bond rating. That's the principal purpose of unrestricted general fund balances. What is missing from our free cash certification, because we handle this differently now, is the surpluses generated by our health insurance program. I've already talked about it so much, I think people are tired of hearing it. Gene and I are trying to work out the mechanism for the transfer of those funds back to the town and how the DLS wants us to handle that.
Would that go into free cash?
It should close to the general fund, right? And it would be, at that point, town meeting's decision as what to do with that money. But just to remind everyone, it's $1 million, over $1 million attributed to the town of Douglas. In the trust fund closed as of June 30 because we are accepting new members into the group. So only those 3 members that were originally in the group, we took their balance in the trust fund and we closed that, so it's not being held to the future. And we also have a share of a pharmacy benefit rebate program that we have to use internally within the trust fund, but it's a lot of money. So it's 2.48, but you got to think that there's other funds out there that will come back into the town. So that there's a positive energy there. It's being generated by, quite frankly, people staying healthy, knock on wood. So but that's all I wanted to share tonight. So what does that 2.48 mean? It means we will have a capital budget at Springtown meeting. It'll probably be about the same size. The difference this year is we won't be looking for a fire engine. So that's going to give you back, there'll be 750 that went for a fire engine this year.
58%.
58% of the budget won't be asked for. So it's going to look a little bit different, feel a little bit different going through the capital process.
Can you just touch on the benefit of the bond rating with that special stabilization account that we're proposing at town meeting?
Well, all stabilization accounts will be summed up to an amount that's available to the town as a reserve fund balance. So all the stabilization funds count towards getting to that percentage.
Yeah, as a whole, but does it put us in a better light when we're trying to be proactive and address a major capital need that comes up every 5 or 6 years?
It can be dangerous territory to try to speak for the rating agencies. However,
Okay.
they publish their scorecards. What they are looking for municipalities to do is have a responsible formula for addressing the long-term capital needs of the community. So they're looking to see that you have identified what needs to be paved or reconstructed or reclaimed, and that you have a plan for funding your roadway improvement program over a long period of time, not just 1 or 2 years at a time. They're looking for the community to have a plan going forward for major expenses like fire equipment or a major building project. Because financially, the pure numbers, it makes a lot more sense to save than to borrow, and we're starting to do that. They like to see strong balances, but not too much, right? So there is a point at which you can actually have too much money, because basically having too much means you're overtaxing people, and you're creating some sort of negative energy on the investment side of it by private parties. But 10% is kind of like the golden, if you can get the 10%. Everybody with a AAA rating is at 10% or higher. And we're at whatever at this point, 7.5%, 8%. So.
Well, when they look at our new economic development projects too,
So they look at that too, so.
that'll help.
They are very bearish on municipalities that are overly reliant upon the residential tax base. You're not going to get much better than AA3 out of your rating experience if you're relying upon 96% of your funds to come from residential taxpayers, or the rest of it coming from state aid.
So that should help solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're well poised for AA2. I don't see us getting AAA the next time we ask.
It does raise a question. Can we get a copy for that probably warrants a discussion? This is the debt schedule for the next 5 years or so.
Absolutely.
It's good to look at from time to time.
On the other hand, you're fighting rising rates too, though.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to tread water, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you save from a bond rating
It's gonna
improvement,
go out
you would
the window.
lose because of interest rate pressure.
Yeah.
But collectively, with everything that we're working on, whether it's economic development, we address some of the road work with the capital process by matching the Chapter 90 funds, as well as the stabilization account to try to address the larger assets that we have to buy.
Yeah, I think once you do that 2-3 years in a row, it really has a higher degree of credibility with people. Is everything signed?
Yes,
Yeah.
except for Kevin's signatures, obviously.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to come in and sign this stuff when you have a chance?
I can swing in tomorrow and do it.
Avaya doesn't have a remote signature thing?
We're working on it.
So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Now, even though that's a stationary picture, Mr. Chairman, I did see a little
There was a
twitch
twinkle.
on that picture when that question was asked about the remote signature participation through Avaya.
We do have a remote tasing feature.
Ouch.
Does that apply to all members of the board?
Not you, Hal.
Thank you.
I think tasers are afraid of you, Hal.
Yeah.
All right, is there any open session topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting?
As much as you'll be disappointed, I don't have anything for you, Mr. Chairman.
It breaks my heart, Mike. Breaks it into tiny little pieces. With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Good night.